And hey everybody, it is another episode of the Bams's Rated R podcast. It is episode 175, that means it's August the 28th. And because it's the end of August, it's the end of a month, we're going to look at the upcoming games for the next month. But that's it. Because it is just after Gamescom, we're going to take a look back at our presence at Gamescom and what we did at Gamescom. Right, Drac?
Oh, multiple personalities now, have you? Yeah, G had to go to Gamescom all by his lonesome.
Yeah, and I literally had to rope some of the game developers into holding the camera while recording with them.
Hey, you did a good job. I saw that, what was it, Devil's Hunt? That worked out pretty well.
Sure. Thankfully, you edited out the big Billy. Yeah. Anyway.
Alright, so let's jump into the games that are coming out in September. First up, September 3rd, we have a whole list of them. Children of Morta. This will be on GOG and on Steam for $21.99, but it is 10% off until the 3rd, so if you like what you see and want to pre-order the game, you can get a 10% discount. It's an action-adventure RPG with pixel art graphics that really, if you haven't seen it and you go take a look at it, it doesn't exactly look like what you would expect something pixel arty to look like. It almost has kind of an updated feel to it. And while this will be out on the 3rd on PC, it will also be coming out on the 15th on Xbox One, PS4, and Switch.
Don't know what you mean. It looks pixel arty, and it's... I guess if you're used to the old days where it was, 8 color, perhaps 16 color pixel art, then yeah, this looks like has a pretty wide range of colors. It looks good visually. The drawing really nice. There's nice fadings, lots of greens and oranges and browns blended together. It's quite good.
Well, the animation too is really, really well done.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where they really sunk a lot of effort into the visuals, into the whole, as you say, animations. So this is one of those, if you don't like pixel art, give this one a spin anyway, because I think to me it looks really good.
Well, next up is one that everyone thought was an April Fool's joke, Conan ChopChop, which, I mean, the name alone sounds like a freaking April Fool's joke. But no, there was the initial trailer for this was released on the 1st of April, which is one of the reasons everyone thought it was a joke. Plus, just the slapstick manner in which the narrator talks over the action on the screen. But this is a 1 to 4 player action adventure with some roguelike elements. They're saying something to the effect of, which may, and I expect probably is an exaggeration, maybe 9 billion random dungeons. But you're playing as Conan, and you have options to play as Valeria, and there are some other characters that you can play as well. This is a more or less top-down, almost not quite. I'd say more top-down, but it's not. You're not staring at the top of the character's head. This is more like a 2D type thing, and control the character running around the screen and hacking and slashing at everything, collecting treasure as you go, avoiding traps and taking down enemies and monsters.
ISO 3D that's been flattened down to 2D?
Yeah, something to that effect, yeah. Some weird brain spiders, too. But
who doesn't like brain spiders?
Yeah, it's got a definite cartoony look and feel to it, but, could be some fun for some 4-player co-op action.
And talking of fun, this is really a case of Funcom that are getting everything they can out of this IP.
Yeah. We got the license and we're going to use it.
Oh, yeah. I made my first expectation when it's at Conan ChopChop, and I'm like, okay, no more dingle dangle.
Oh, jeez. I guess somebody had to go there.
Sorry, that's the first thing I think of when I think Conan. And then, ChopChop. Oh, poor Drac. Should we move on to Last Oasis?
First DLC character you can play as, Lorena Bobbitt. Or maybe that's one of the bosses you run into. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, alright, we'll move on to the next one. Also on the September 3rd, this is Last Oasis. Will be out on Steam. I've not found a price for this yet. Steam has this annoying thing where it'll show you a release date, but not a price sometimes. I'm not really sure why they do that, but kind of.
It's something developers set up on the back end.
Yeah.
So you can go into your developer console for a game, and you can literally say whether to show the price or not.
Yeah, I find that thoroughly annoying. But anyway, this is a post-cataclysmic survival action role-playing game MMO, because it needed all the acronyms. But I guess this takes place on Earth, where the Earth has stopped rotating, and there's only a small part of the planet between the scorching hot and frozen cold hemispheres that's inhabitable. And then humanity's got to keep on the move to survive while, trying to, find and collect resources or steal them from other people. There's a base building aspect to it, but whereas in most survival games your base would be solidly locked onto a piece of land, you're actually building these large moving machines that creepily walk along like spiders and insects. It's an interesting design choice. It definitely, design-wise, I think it stands out from a lot of other things, but I don't know. I'm not too big on the survival stuff, but...
Think Dragon Age, the land ships that the elves had, or the elven meets steampunk.
Yeah, it definitely has a steampunk feel to it. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, Walkabout land ships. And of course, I just hope they get into the whole, how did the planet stop rotating? Did it really stop, or is it just tightly locked to the sun? Oh, poor Drac. Me saying things, you can just see him. He's sitting there going, Tower.
We were talking about this right before, and I said that leave it to G to science it up. You can't just let developers just create some kind of story. You gotta dig into the science of it, tear it apart.
Oh yeah. But no, the thing is, standing still, the dark side will get about minus 40 to minus 60 degrees Celsius, but there will still be hot springs. There will still be lava underneath. You could still have a place that's functional in a scenario like that, as long as you can tap the core.
Well, that might be available in an upcoming DLC. Who knows?
Yeah, hashtag Frostpunk. That's a good game. Oh well. Yeah, Last Oasis. I'm not much for survival games. ARPGs I like. It's just, if it's survival, as in go and eat things, go and drink things,
Yeah, I agree with you there. I've never been much for the survival type.
Going onwards, though, to a game that I've been looking forward to, at least a year and a half by now. I guess we first heard about it. Phoenix Point. Here I'm very much expecting that it'll be some good story. I've actually tried it. I sucked at it. I tried it, half a year ago. But if you're into turn-based tactical strategy, XCOM, and literally these are the creators behind XCOM, Phoenix Point is hitting all those classical XCOM bullet points with how you shoot and move and find enemies and get totally overwhelmed by aliens.
Well, this one has kind of an interesting mechanic where the enemies will mutate in response to how you're playing the game. So they, mutate to modify themselves, I guess, which would make the game more difficult. So even if you find a strategy that might work in one encounter, they may have mutated and that same strategy won't work in the next encounter.
See, I wouldn't know that because I sucked so much at the demo that I played that, I think the developers were ready to tear me away from the machine. They looked awesome, rotating around. They really, instead of it rotating 90 degrees like the first ones, it rotates nicely. All the graphics are made quite well, so as you rotate around, you can see what's hiding behind things, etc. I like the visuals of it, even if I suck at this gameplay.
Yeah, visually it was a really impressive looking game.
I think of the turn-based tactical strategy games, XCOM derivatives, it's the one that looks the best, in my opinion, most impressive. There are others that have really good graphics and good visuals, but if you're going for that semi-realistic look, this one, definitely.
Alright, and from there we jump to September 10th, Gears of War 5 on Steam and the Windows Store. And will also be on Xbox One. This is one of their Xbox exclusives for $59.99. And I'm trying to remember if there was a collector's edition. So there might be a collector's edition for this that was a little bit more. But this is for those who maybe don't know, first-person shooter. It has 3-person co-op, one of which you can actually play as the drone, and then you can kind of fly around, scout things, help get some of your companions up and whatnot. Which is, I believe that's a new feature in this one. I don't remember ever seeing that before in the previous ones.
Yeah, it's a cute thing. The developers themselves say that it's there to help players like me who suck also at first-person shooters. That you can play sort of a support role instead. So the drone is meant as a support role. Listen, why not? And I think looking at it, Gear's never really done anything for me, but I might actually play this one if I had two other players, and then I would want to play as the drone.
Well, I'll probably be picking this one up, but I won't be picking it up quite at launch. It'll be a little further down the road before I get to this. I have too much of a backlog to get through at the moment.
But tell me about a Control just released. Ooh.
Yeah. So there'll be some additional modes to play besides the campaign story mode. There's also Escape, where you attempt to outrun a bomb, and while also attempting to outrun the swarm of enemies that are coming at you. There's Versus, where you play team versus team, racking up points. There's Horde mode, where you and they're saying you and 4 friends, so it sounds like 5-player at that point. Endure waves of ever stronger enemies and bosses until you can't do it anymore. And they're also including a map builder, so that's kind of cool because it'll allow folks to create their own custom Hive maps for post up on for you to download and try out other player maps.
Nice. I'm thinking I kind of want to play the other Gears Funko Pop thing. Gears Pop.
I downloaded that to my phone, and that's as far as I got with it. I still haven't even opened it up yet.
I like they got that Gears Pop is Mediatronic and Devolver Digital, so it's weird. But I think it actually looks pretty good. I'm just annoyed it doesn't run on anything that I own.
What's that you always say about upgrading your standards?
I think it's a case of whoever did this game just assumed everybody has the latest Android phones.
Yeah, it could be. Or maybe...
And mine's a 2007 Huawei.
2007?
17, sorry.
Oh, okay.
It's late here, okay? I'm tired. 2017. Yeah, I have an Android phone from 2 years before they released the first Android phone.
I was just gonna say, how is that even possible, and how is that battery life on that phone?
Moving on, something that might be a little bit more up my aisle. GreedFall. It seems to be a RPG with diplomacy in it, so you have to choose your companions, your fellas, and create your little group so you can talk diplomacy, because that's always how you want to solve your RPGs. But it looks nice, visually, very much reminding me of the latest Dragon Age.
I can see that for sure.
Yeah, less magic, more slashing, and I like they had flintlock guns. One of the companions of the show in the trailer aimed a rifle and then triggered it, and you can see that it comes out in sparks for a couple of seconds and then it shoots. It was kind of nice, little touch.
Well, and you say less magic, but it seems to be, specific to the character, where the characters come from. Because I think there's a group that, are very intermingled with nature, and so there's scenes that you'll see throughout the trailer where it's like vines and stuff coming up and encircling people and whatnot. So it looks like there's some kind of nature magic in it, but yeah, maybe not to the same level as something like Dragon Age.
Yeah, and a couple of the hostiles looked a little bit supernatural. Just a wee bit.
So yeah, diplomacy is definitely the big focus of this, but it's not going to be the only way to solve issues. In fact, depending on which characters you have in your group at a time and how they feel about other people that you're talking to, they said that they can even force you into a conflict. For instance, if you're playing a character who really hates some group that you're interacting with, and you're trying to be diplomatic about it, but that character could then insert themselves into the discussion and then cause it to be an immediate conflict. So if you're into RPGs and you're definitely into a lot of talking, a lot of reading, it sounds like potentially a deep story with a lot of different options, as far as whether or not it's endings or just different ways to play through it. This could definitely be a game for you.
Can I point out, I mentioned Dragon Age. When we look at BioWare games, you have lots of companions. It's usually actually a trophy to collect all the companions. But there's rarely a downside. There's rarely, I selected this companion, therefore part of the story will fail, or therefore this branch will not be available. And this, as GreedFall does, you have an encounter and you specifically have this one, now it turns nasty.
Yeah.
BioWare will do the thing where, that character shows up. It's scripted. Either you bring the character or the character shows up. They will be in that encounter. But having the option saying, oh, I'm going to this encounter, I don't have this character, therefore I go one branch, or I do have the character, therefore I'm being forced into another branch.
Well, and the other thing...
Something BioWare needs.
Yeah, and the other thing they were doing with this that I thought was kind of neat was each of these characters, each of these companions, so to speak, that you have in your group has their own storyline to play through. They have their own desires, their own things that they feel they need to accomplish. And they were saying that if you leave them be for too long, they start to feel ignored, and they will actually leave your group. So, you know, if you ignore some of your companions for too long, you may not have access to use them either.
See, again, one of those fun things, because in BioWare games, if you don't pay attention to them, nothing happens, but if you pay too much attention to them, you end up in bed with them.
Yeah. And I think there may be some romantic or relationship stuff in this one as well. I'm not entirely certain.
Well, it's one of those to keep an eye on, because both Drac and I are quite into playing RPGs, so we'll probably be checking it out. Somebody's pointing at me. Okay.
Yeah, I think this one will probably be more for you, because I find it really difficult to... I'm still struggling to find time to play through Witcher 3. How old is that game now?
No idea. I haven't played through the second one yet.
Yeah, so it's just... the game is great, and I've enjoyed what I have played of it. It's just finding the time to sit down and really dig into the story.
Remember to finish it before you start the next game. What's it called? Cyberpunk something?
I don't see that happening.
Yeah, no, I don't want to play Cyberpunk either.
No, I don't see myself finishing Witcher before I start that. You knew exactly what I was saying. Alright, so GreedFall, that one will be out for PC, PS4, Xbox One for $49.99.
Okay, September 12th, we're slowly moving through the month. Men of War, Assault Squad 2 Cold War for PC, which is a real-time strategy, because they're always so much fun to play, right? Well, finally they're getting into the Cold War, and you can now play in the Cold War as either US or Soviet soldiers. So at least they give us both options, instead of just saying, oh, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys.
Well, and it can be played single player or co-op, which is cool. I always love to see these things have a co-op option, because that just adds to the number of games that we can play at our LAN sessions when we get together and play. So,
oh, you don't want to play with me?
Play a PC game at our LAN session.
Well, you shouldn't, because I played Year of Rain at Gamescom, and admittedly we were playing 2v2, and the other guy that I was playing with, another journalist from Denmark, completely randomly, he was too busy doing everything but playing. And on the other side, I think it was a couple of streamers, and one of them was deep into RTS and just whooped our asses. But yeah, RTSs, they can be fun, they can be really annoying.
Yeah, and I think
this one, sorry?
I was just saying, I think that where this one kind of stands at least a little bit apart from many of the other RTSs that are out there is it's not World War II, and it's not some, fictional universe out there. You're getting to play with, U.S. and Soviet forces, which is slightly different from what you'd be accustomed to.
Yeah, and I like this one's a little bit more realistic scenarios. Normally that can be a downer, but I think this one might actually be a good thing.
Yeah, I think usually with RTS and with war games like that, it can be actually fun to play something that is a little more realistic slant to it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the space ones and fictional ones are definitely fun as well. But there's something about this that's the way that you play through it when it has a realistic look to it. That's kind of like it almost gives you the feel that you're actually controlling a real army in some way.
Yeah, and I think it's the opposite of first-person shooters. There, a lot of people want realism, but the realism can be too much. Here, at least you're not looking straight at the characters as they're getting blown to bits.
Well, I suppose there's that, too.
But talking of blowing things to bits, September 13th. I think that's one of those where you don't even have to mention it. Everybody already knows what comes out September 13th.
Yeah, Epic Game Store exclusive, also on PS4 and Xbox One for $59.99.
Had to put that in.
Yes, I did.
Oh, poor you.
It's important to tell folks where they can find the game.
Yes.
But Borderlands 3, cel-shaded FPS. What can we say? It's another Borderlands game. Bajillion guns, Of course, if this is on your radar, you've seen the trailer with, there's even a little gun that runs around on its own 2 legs shooting at things. So, I expect, much of this same types of shenanigans we're used to from the Borderlands universe.
I have faith that the story and the storytelling is going to be, I want to say, better. In previous Borderlands, it wasn't that it was bad. It was very much focused on, let's just make sure everything's funny. And one of the things that I attended recently was a talk by Gearbox on the narrative in Borderlands, particularly in Borderlands 3, and how they've changed from all the games up until Borderlands 3, and that includes that weird one that didn't go anywhere. I think you played it for a while. They tended to have one person responsible for the narrative, for the story and storytelling. And that person then would kind of get input from all the other groups, all the other teams. But now they have a team, a narrative group, and they have stakeholders from all the other groups, from level design, from character design, and how that all ties into creating a more cohesive story, which is necessary because it's a much bigger game. So I'm hopeful that storytelling will be better than it was in the previous ones. Not necessarily funnier, because it was plenty funny, but character models played in quite well in the past. But environmental storytelling I always felt was a bit flat on Borderlands. Perhaps I'll be a bit better, and perhaps we'll have a little bit bigger and deeper stories this time, because they now have a team that is responsible for it.
I don't know. Speaking solely for myself, I don't think I ever really played Borderlands much for the story anyway.
No, but there are bits that are interested in it. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
True.
But you're right. You played. Ultimately, this is a game you play to have fun with your mates, to run around and blow everything up.
Yep.
That hero feeling, that superior thing. And I do like that you mentioned that it's cel-shaded, because nobody knew that Borderlands was cel-shaded.
All right, and on the 20th of September, one I have been looking forward to and will be excited to get my hands on. This is a reimagining or a recreation and updating of The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. So you may remember this from back on, I believe this was Super Nintendo was when this game first came out. But now what they're saying, at least in the description for the game, it states, explore a reimagined Koholint Island that's been faithfully rebuilt and in a brand new art style that will entice fans and newcomers alike. It's also going to feature some additional enemies that the old one didn't feature, like some from the Mario universe. And one of the neat features that they've added to this thing is that you'll be able to create your own custom dungeons. And the way that you're going to do this is, as you complete dungeons that you go through, you will collect some of the rooms from those dungeons. And then when you go to create your own, you piece together all these different rooms that you've collected along the way to make your own custom dungeon. And then you can share that out, apparently. So I thought that was kind of a neat addition to the game.
Okay.
And not much to say on this one, huh?
Nope, I assume the princess has been asleep after something and now she wakes up. Yay.
And the princess is?
Link?
Oh, if I could slap you.
It says so. Should we move on to the last one? The big one. The cherry on the top. The ice cream at the end of the dinner.
I mean, does it really qualify as any of that?
It's FIFA. FIFA 20 on September 27th.
Yeah, I mean, what is...
Another yearly football game by EA, and it's a full price one because somehow that makes sense.
Yeah, and you're going to have to start your collections all over again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say this, that some of the stuff I've seen coming out of this, which I believe is also included in this, is the whole Volta football thing, which is street-level soccer versus, always playing in a big stadium. So if you are, into sports games, especially into the FIFA games, this could be a new addition that maybe refreshes the genre for you.
Did used to play 4-a-side when I was a kid. That was fun. Well, even fairly into adolescence. It's a fun style to play. I don't know. It might look well on computers. But the trailers they showed looked good, but how it plays and how it controls and if it's interesting remains to be seen. But they have to do something, because it's just FIFA yet again. Like Drac's just sitting there, face completely blank.
Like you said, it's another FIFA game.
Yeah. But the new bits look interesting. Perhaps they're onto something there. For once. And, the usual surprise mechanics.
Yeah. Alright, and that'll wrap up our upcoming game segment. Stick around. After the break, we're going to come back and talk about G's trip to Gamescom. I'm glad you're editing this one.
The Bamsters rated our show, where console peasants and PC master racers unite in glorious bacon.
Alright, and we are back. So we are going to sit down and we're going to talk about all the fun things that G got to see and do while he was at Gamescom. We'll try not to let it run too long, since I know we're squishing a bunch of things into this episode. But, G, what did you get to see and do?
Well, let's start with this was 5 days in Conan, or Cologne as you say over there. So we can't squeeze that into half an hour, but we'll kind of pick a few bits and pieces out. Some had already released, Drac was nice and put it out, the Devil's Hunt interview. Legends of Laria, the written interview is already up. We might do more with both of them in the nearish future. But there's a few bits and pieces that I kind of picked out that I thought was interesting. Last week we talked about all the ones that were already planned at the time, who I'm going to see and how and what. But plans change, right?
Yeah.
The best of plans suddenly meet reality, and suddenly you're meeting with other people, or you're missing people. Like the Tuesday morning, I woke up to a message that was sent at 2:30 in the morning from somebody that was supposed to meet at 9:30. That they given up. They just finished setting up their booth for Gamescom and they were not going to show up. So I want to say who and what because, that's unfair.
Well,
but that meant one less meeting that day.
Well, that could work out in your favor, I suppose.
Yeah, no, when I saw it, I just took my phone and changed the alarm by about 25 minutes and rolled over to sleep some more.
Alright, but who did you get to see?
Well, one that was kind of interesting because it's not games, but it's gaming. A company called Drown Audio. They're the guys from Canada, but it's a Scottish company, and that was inside the UKIE booth. Now, we edit a lot of audio, we listen to a lot of audio here on the show, and having decent earphones or headphones, depending on what you prefer, kind of matters. But Drown Audio isn't just about the audio quality, but imagine earphones, i.e. the things that go inside your ear, but that touches the anti-helix. That would be if you sort of stick your finger not into your ear but into the cavity just before it enters the ear, the hard bit, the cartilage bit, that points opposite from the hole into your ear. That's the anti-helix, and this is an earphone that rests on that and sort of helps stimulate it and not quite, they say bone conduction, but cartilage conduction. It vibrates the whole ear so it sounds sort of like directional, binaural, or heck, if you tried it, Dolby Atmos, where there's those 136 something speakers. So it's supposed to give you a much wider range, not in terms of tones, but in terms of how you pick it up and how the whole effect is sounding to you. And for people who play video games, this means you get much more pinpoint accuracy on the sound, where it's coming from, primarily in the plane around you, because that's how our ears work. We're not developed to hear up above and below very well, but in the plane around us, yeah, we hear that quite well, and this is an attempt at mimicking that. You'll see some people have earphones. I used to have some over-ears where there were 3 drivers inside of it and aimed at the ears in specific ways so it gets that surround sound effect. They never work well, but these ones supposedly does a really good job at it.
Okay.
And then there's why I say supposedly, because the effect did not kick in with me at all.
Oh.
I listened to them, and he went, "Oh, this trailer, the Star Wars trailer," and I immediately looked at him like, "Bah, it will show it really well." It's going, nope, I can hear the separation, etc. And he asked that I be nice. The ones I listened to, he gave me 2 pairs. We listened to 2 pairs. Audio separation was pretty good. For anybody who wants details, I particularly pulled up Apollo 440's Lost in Space, the soundtrack from that, or the main theme by Apollo 440. That will punish any headset or speakers, I promise it. Listen to it. But it has a lot of music going on and doing scales and everything and spoken word and drums, but it then also have separation in that there's some spaceship sounds flying behind you, and it played that quite well. but I think he had a broken, like a Y connector, so he could listen to what I was listening to, and that was killing the sound. So the experience was off because of that Y connector. I think there was a broken wire in it, or possibly in the first headset that I tried. Earphones, not headset. So wasn't a perfect test. There were some issues. There were some mid-tones that weren't quite the way they should. We might be taking a deeper look at them later. I might be doing something with them later. But that would also be with a prototype headset. But if this sounds like something people are into, it's on Indigo right now. That was announced during Gamescom. There's an Indigo campaign for them, so you can go and you can kind of invest in them if you want to. Now, the usual disclaimer, we're not getting anything, it's not a referral link. And this is only for, if you're really into tech, because it's early days. And it's not something we can show how it works. You have to get your ears on them. So if you're into tech, if you're into sound, if you're into playing games, or for that matter, watching video, movies, with that surround sound effect while wearing earphones, go check them out. I think he said it's about 100, I haven't checked right now, but about 100 bacon tokens. Which is the upper scale of what I would suggest anybody spends on a pair of earphones, unless you really know what you're getting. And in this case, it's a new product. Nobody knows what they're getting unless they've tried it. So, Drown Audio, go to Indiegogo, we might put a link into it, and check them out. And then hopefully in about 3 months' time, we might do something more with it. Remains to be seen, but I think it's an interesting thing. I think it's interesting earphones. I would invest them in myself, but again, if I get to play with them some more, I might more you could do later on.
I didn't want to interrupt at the beginning, but when you started talking about it being a Scottish company based in Canada, my mind...
Well, no, the guy's from Canada and the company's based in Scotland.
Yeah, well, my mind immediately was trying to figure out how Scottish and Canadian accents would merge together in one. And then I think I came back in around the time you were talking about sticking your finger in your ear, and that led me to a question, though. How comfortable were they to wear those?
So if I'm used to wearing in-ears, and these are using foam. Now, people haven't tried it. There's a distinct feeling whether you're using cheap plastics, decent silicone, or foam. Particularly there's a brand called Comply Foam that I'm a fan of. Foam is super comfortable, and it's really good at excluding sound from your surroundings, so it's really good at passive muting. Silicone has a okay feeling. The ones I'm wearing right now are silicone, and cheaper rubber, plasticky ones don't. They just crumble apart eventually. But these are good, and if you're used to twist ends, i.e. earphones you put up to your ear at a, like, almost turned upside down, and then turn them around, and they slide into your ear. My Braggy Dash does that. There's a lot of various ones that does it. They can be really comfortable if you get the right fit.
Okay.
So, yeah, to me they were comfortable, but to some degree because I was used to it, to some degree because they fit quite well. They're expecting a 98% fit. That means it will fit 98% of people. And as the foam helps with the feel, but I can't rule out somebody will go, ooh, the foam is really uncomfortable.
Right. And you're right, they're $99 at least on the Indiegogo at the moment, and you can get 2 pair for just $180. As of the day that we are recording, which will be a few days before release, they're sitting at just over half their goal with 25 days to go.
Yeah. So before we take a deeper look, the Indiegogo will be well gone. But if you're into audio, if you're into tech, have a good look at it. I said this is something I would support, but I'm nerdy and I like audio things.
Well, and one thing I think we should mention about this too is that there is also a mic that you can attach to the headset. So if you're used to gaming with a headset and a mic, there is a mic that you can plug into this and still make use of it like that.
Yeah, and people have tested it with a PlayStation controller. It says that it works quite nicely.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but of course then you're losing some fidelity because the PlayStation controller is wireless.
Right.
So, give some, take some.
All right, what's next?
Well, since you're our comic book expert, we mentioned this one last week, but Liberated by Walkabout Games, Polish company. Drac's giving me the big old shrug.
I am not the comic book expert, that's TJ. I'm the regular guy.
Yeah, anyways, Liberated, right now it's a game set in a comic book, but the interesting part with it is that it's the technology for putting stories and games into this comic book setting. And it works kind of nice that you go from cell to cell on a page, and some of them are just showing you information, you just read them, and they're animated, I think you looked at something, Drac, where you get that 3D effect, an animated comic book, where it's still passive reading, but it's sort of animated usually on tablets, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So you get that, but then some of the scenes you have to play, and some of them are just get from point A to B or solve a small puzzle. Some of them you get to make choices. Do you go one direction, do you go the other? In Liberated, at one point you get arrested early on in the story. Do you resist, or do you just hands up and go with the police, or do you run away? Now the story they made it's sort of linear. There's only one ending, and you can sort of go, well, if you remember the good old choose your own adventure stories, right?
Right.
Yeah, so if you go with the police, you get certain cells on page, and if you resist and you run away, then you get another page with a set of things, but they both end out the same place.
So
you both end up
branches out and then funnels back in.
Precisely. And it was actually interesting. The story they made, if you like Sin City, come on, who doesn't? This is where TJ would punch me, because now the name of the guy behind Sin City just eluded me. Damn it. But the story they wrote is very much Sin City inspired. The visuals the setting it's quite well made. And the whole tech is meant for multiple comic books. So it's one of those, if I were them, I would throw this at a company like IDW to get some of their content put into it. I think it will be quite a fit. Here in where I am, Belgium, most of the comics I don't think are a good fit for this, except if you're targeting particularly kids, younger kids, could be fun. And they say there are in talk with certain parties, various comic book producers, here in Europe at least. So, might be more of it. Liberated is just the example of the technology, but they hope to make the technology available to others.
That's kind of interesting, because they may have just invented kind of a new genre of video games, the interactive comic book.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, it's not unsimilar to a couple of point and clicks, except there's no point and clicking. Most of it, you just click B for the next page, next page, or next cell.
Yeah.
So, definitely try this one out. Just look it up. As if you're into the whole dark, gritty thing, then it seems like a really good story. I only had half an hour with both the story and the developer, so 25 minutes really, because I had to move on. But I liked what I saw, and hence why we're bringing it in here.
Alright, well, the next one is one that I've kind of had my eyes on for a little while, because I'm definitely interested in taking a closer look at this one. But Waylanders RPG, you got a chance to play that while you were there?
No.
Ah, okay.
If you saw they announced the big trailers and everything.
Yeah.
I got sneak peeks.
Okay.
And particularly I got in with Fernando, the managing director for it and for the whole Gato Studios, Cat Studios, weird name. Oh, because I walked by and he was standing in front of the Spanish booth, frantically typing on his phone. I snapped a picture of him. I think Drac has it all, otherwise I'll make sure he gets a copy so we can have it in the background right now. And he kind of went, "Oh, are you here to see this? And how do you know of it?" And I said, "Yeah, well, we know of it this way and that way, and Kickstarters and whatnot." Oh, okay, and come back in a few hours, we'll have the trailer. And I came back and got a personal, really in-depth introduction to the game. My first feeling, Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter Nights, that kind of ISO 3D, that kind of controls, mechanics, etc. There's a really interesting mechanic in the game that, depending on what you play as, you get something they call formations. You can put your team into formations that does things. And then imagine the whole team just kind of merges together to one character that shoots, or the other group makes like a shield turtle to protect a fallen character, a fallen comrade, that sort of thing. Or they merge together to form a golem. So depending on what you play as, you get these two formations that you can channel the team into.
Gotcha.
There's some interesting mechanics. There is magic, but this is also, the Waylanders. It is, Drac, you're half Irish, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Celtic, but it's based on the Celtics in northwestern Spain. But people who were there, the Celts that were there, who then migrated up to Ireland and to Scotland. And it's based on those stories and on the paths over by sea and by land and how those are linked. I got a lot of history thrown at me. I was not prepared. I did not have my recorder out. So I don't want to go into details and try to say things and just get it wrong. But it sounds like they're really going in deep with all these things. And if anybody knows the place, Logroño in northern Spain, awesome town. Go to the old city, go and have some food. There's a nice little collection of tapas restaurant. But there's one of the towers, historical towers from Logroño is in the game, for example.
Oh, cool.
There's there's a lot of little things. As you said, this one we've been having our eyes on. It's going to be awesome. I'm already sure of it. And the time I spent with Fernando just told me, this is going to be great. They're growing the team. They're quite at that point where now they need to show it and get it out. And interestingly enough, he talked about going transmedia. So putting the story out in other media like movies or TV shows.
Oh, okay.
Or book form, novel form. Comic books, they are actively, according to him, investigating doing something like this. So, yes, please.
Yeah.
And, I would want, I'm a sucker for them, sorry, a comic book that tells some of the surrounding stories, some of the background stories.
Yeah.
And please make this a thing that comes out so I can get a physical copy with the comic book and everything in it.
Part of a collector's edition.
Yeah, this is not something I normally engage in. Done a little bit from Mass Effect, Dragon Age, etc. I have some of the books. Resistance, Fall of Man, I even have books from. This is one that I want as well. Most games I don't care about it, but this is one that I wanted in. And the game comes out in 2020. I mean, with the names they have behind it, EGB is on it, Inon Sur is on it. Gato was connected to it initially, which might be why it looks kinda BioWare-ish. Just a little bit.
Special note for people who stream. Enon Zur does some amazing music, but turn off the game music when you stream, because from our past experience, his company that looks out for the stuff that he does online will copyright claim all of the stuff that has his music in it.
Repeatedly.
Yeah.
Repeatedly. So, and they just announced another writer whose name eluded me, but the writing team on it looks really good, and the setting and the fact that they are tying it in to actual history, to actual settings, to actual places, etc. I think is going to, if you're a nerd at least, going to make this an excellent experience. And I am chasing, I have an early okay that we might have somebody from the team on to talk about the game when we get closer to 2020.
Nice. Did they give you any ideas, like fall, spring, summer 2020, or they don't know yet?
I think if everything's smooth, then spring.
Oh, okay.
If things get funky, might early access spring, and then release fall 3 to 6 months later. But the early access is only if some things don't play out the way they hope, if some plans don't go quite the way they want, because they're targeting straight to 1.0 as I understood it. So this isn't to say there will be an early access, but it's in the cards. And one of the scenarios they're looking at involves that.
I think I would have suggested that releasing the PC, if they could, some kind of early access just to do like bug finding and stuff like that maybe that depending on the size of their QA team, it almost feels to me like no matter how big the QA team is, that with the variety of hardware out there for PCs and stuff, that there's going to be some things that you didn't or maybe even couldn't expect. So yeah, if they can do PC early access for bug finding, if nothing else, that would probably be a good idea.
So it was unplanned to meet them, but I knew where they were, and as I said, they were at the Spanish booth. Recently we had Novarama from Kill Squad on, right?
Yep.
Gato. He was literally at the same booth just around the corner.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but I never got to say hi to him because he was just never there while I was there.
Oh, no.
I dropped by 3 times. And then I did not notice on the other side of the booth, because I did not think to go over there and look, there were our friends from Hyperparasite.
Excellent.
Yeah, so it was one of those. He caught me over in the business area and said, yeah, we're there. I was just there. No, we're hiding. It's annoying. And he complained a bit. And I said, oh, fuck, okay. So the last moments I had, run over there. Hey, hi. Saw him, take some pictures. It was a nice booth, but it was laid out wrong. It was laid out quite wrong. And that's one of the fun things that I don't see elsewhere. Like, there was a Spanish booth, there was a French booth, there was, in the business area, there was a UKIE booth, just for UK industry. It was literally just tables stacked next to each other, where you're sitting really close and having meetings. There are people right next to you at another table having also meetings. Those are whole areas set aside just for Germany. And within that, if anybody knows Germany is made up of states, much like US is, just a few of them. So if you went into the Germany area, it was still, there's the Bayern area, there's the Hamburg area, there's different areas, different states, or groups of states inside this Germany area. It's quite awesome.
All right, and I see one more thing on here for Gamescom that it looks like you're going to try to put me to sleep with.
Oh, this was super nerdy. So I had to sit down with Hadean, who makes AetherOS. And AetherOS is a platform for distributed processing. So if something needs a lot of processing, this is one of those platforms you can put it on. That sounds like, what the hell does that have to do with gaming? Well, a lot of games have multiple shards. Even when you play MMO, you're either here or you're there or you're over there, and therefore you're on different servers. But if you want the whole thing to be seamlessly one, I know a lot of them make seamless transitions, but if you want one that's really a single shard, then you distribute that out via one of these OSs, like AetherOS. So they are having basically a platform. There's no games announced, I should say, for this platform, but where you can put this backend of a game onto it, and it will handle seamlessly the scaling of your backend to however many computers, how much processing you need. And for people who followed it, there's something called Eve Ether Wars. There's that Ether again. So CCP Games have been using it to run tests with Hadean, set sort of in the Eve universe, but not in Eve Online, where you play, it's 1 hour test they did, literally the Sunday just before Gamescom. You just fly around and shoot the other players, and however many thousand players there are, they're all there with you. So you can fly over and shoot them.
Or get shot by all of them, I think is how I responded to that.
So I had to sit down with them. We'll do more about it, but I recorded, I need to transcribe it, and we'll be doing some follow-ups. So there'll be an article later on. My first attempt at long-form reporting.
Yeah, good luck with that. Transcribing is not
fun.
No.
I transcribe all the reviews I do myself. But they had 3,000-something concurrent players here in Phase 2. They also talked, and this is then where we changed from Gamescom to DevCom, because before Gamescom there was something called DevCom, which is only for businesses, for developers to meet each other and have fun, networking, talk about all sorts of things. And that's also where I had the presentation about Borderlands I mentioned earlier. Well, there was a talk by Hadean about the gaming record they did, the attempt to do it anyway. Well, I think they actually set the record during Phase 1 of Ether Wars, where this Sunday was Phase 2. And their background coming from medical processing, which they couldn't talk about because it's medical, and therefore the companies do not want them to talk about it, except that that's what they do. And all the tech that goes into it, and why you can't just do this in Linux, and all the experiences they made. There was some really awesome talk by a guy called Rashid. And after that, I took him aside, we just nerded, and you could see all the community and non-development guys just kind of backed away and faded into the background. One of them, I'm not kidding, after the talk at DevCom, where I was chatting with Rashid, they kind of pointed out, because I have a ponytail, small one, that whenever they see somebody with that, they assume that it's a Unix or Linux professor. And after the chat, he concluded that I probably was. So fuck. Okay. But it was interesting. And just in parallel, might as well mention, I also had a word with Dual Universe. That's Noah Quark. They are doing something similar, but they're making their own engine and game at the same time. So it's not a platform for licensing to other, but it's a full game. So we might be following up with some Dual Universe as well. And I also had a very random and short chat with Improbable, who does Spatial OS. So if you recently heard about Worlds Adrift that got cancelled, that was the platform it was built on. Clang, their game Seed, is coming out on it, and the difference between that and the other ones is that that's not meant for scaling and distribution, but it's meant for online and multiplayer gameplay in various forms, always hosted. And I'm not going to mention names, numbers and stuff now, but they put out examples of pricing, and it's kind of amazing how much it actually costs to do a multiplayer backend.
Yeah.
It's very non-cheap.
There's a man, I'm struggling to remember the name of it right now, but there was a Kickstarter I was looking at that was advertising itself as a like a Cyberpunk VR MMO mixed with a little bit of like JRPG, and I can definitely see like the JRPG aspects of it. In some ways I was kind of struggling to see a little bit of the cyberpunk to it, just because it looked more magical than cybernetic and punky. Yeah, I think they're using Spatial OS for what they're doing.
It's being used in quite a few places. The one that was interesting, while talking, I look at this paper and it says, DareWise, who we had on the show season 2, to talk about Rogue, a game that's supposedly still there, but they aren't developing on, haven't been for a while, that their next project, Project C, will run on it. And when I mentioned that, the woman I talked to was about to say things and then just shut up, because DareWise are not talking about Project C. And she just remembered she wasn't supposed to either, but she says it's looking good. So,
Zenith. That was the game I was trying to think of. Sorry.
Yes. But that's the awesome part of DevCom, is that it's just developers and us pretends to be press people checking things out. So just 2 days leading up to Gamescom. A lot of people will show up for DevCom and then not Gamescom, and vice versa. We did both. But it's presentations, it's hands-on with indie games, it's networking, it's talk. Rockfish, if you guys know them, I know them from a really unfortunate story, so I'm not going to retell. But their CEO came up and talked about Everspace, and as well as a background from the company, because they have a background in also in space games, but on mobile, and talked about how doing Everspace, kind of betting the company on it, actually going bankrupt and then forming a new company and betting that one on Everspace, and everything that meant. It was a really good talk, but some of the things that I wanted to pull out from it was they were 10 people when they were making Everspace.
Oh, wow.
And this was while VR, at a specific point there were 10 people, and VR was coming up, and everybody was expecting, I guess a little bit because of Eve, not Eve Online, but Eve Valkyrie. We saw how that was built around VR, and everybody was expecting everything space gaming must be VR, because of course that makes sense. It doesn't. There are issues in certain types of space games, space fighters. It doesn't translate well to VR. Everspace is one of them. But it was expected and it was demanded, and they ended up allocating one person full-time to do this. And if you have 10 people, that's 10% of your team. Bigger game would have required more people, so this scales somewhat. 10% of the team allocated to VR. They have the statistics that about or just under 1% of the players used it. So there's a cost-benefit. A lot of really loud players wanted VR, but only 1% used it. Then it's not worth it. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I almost feel like, or at least in some ways I kind of hope that something like this can be looked at as paying into like a deposit into VR development for down the road, that maybe it has some kind of dividend that pays off later down the road, because VR is still a small section of the gaming community, a lot because of cost.
Yeah, and that's the headache, how many people actually have it.
Yeah.
The paying it forward or paying it down the road doesn't work for them, because again, Everspace just isn't a fit for VR. It's too frantic, you're too likely to throw up. That was the headache that Valkyrie had. They had to limit movement of the ship and make this continuous single speed, more or less, vehicle. You accelerate and decelerate slowly in Valkyrie, relatively. Whereas Everspace is a 5 degree of freedom. So, hello, Vomit Comet. And they had a similar headache with HOTAS, or HOTAS, as I like to call it, that there was a very loud minority who wanted hands-on throttle and stick HOTAS support, which, again, I wouldn't see as a perfect fit for Everspace. Everspace, I would actually want dual stick, but I don't even think they made it that far in development. But that small minority demanded it, and they ended up having to put it in. And again, limited use, ownership, when they look at it. And because it's a very configurable game, it's a nightmare to set up, and it's actually the one they got most complaints about, apparently. People disliked the game because it wasn't easy to set up.
Yeah, I know a few guys that use the joysticks for flight games and stuff like that, and they really get into it. I think they might even have like foot pedals and stuff like that. Not something I ever got into. Again, there's a cost involved in, getting all that stuff, and like you were talking about the setup. But, yeah, it's a small percentage, because I think most of us out there playing PC games would rather just use keyboard and mouse or a controller.
Yeah, for a game like this, controller, possibly controller with extra buttons. But for me, dual stick. But again, a reasonable stick is 100, 150 for one stick. Going dual stick and then pedals, ooh, it's expensive.
Yeah.
He had problems with the VR. He's telling stories like people complained or simply didn't buy the game because of when they released with VR support, Steam only had one logo for VR, and people thought they meant VR only. So people were not buying the game and complaining that it was a VR game, and they wanted to play it without VR. Since then, within the last 6 months, so this year basically, Steam has changed, and now you can have VR optional. So people can see the VR logo and it says optional, and then they know you can still play it. So there's, it would be nice if there were things like clear that it was VR first, or if it's, flat screen first. But that's just not a thing on Steam. So that cost them sales, it cost them effort, all round that relative minority with VR, with HOTAs, that cost them effort and it cost money, cost them sales. So it was an interesting talk. It's one that I think a lot of gamers should have seen, particularly the really loud ones. It's one that if it exists, I doubt it. I don't think they recorded it, but if he does one that gets recorded, next time I see players demand that some feature be supported, I would send that to them and say, watch this and understand what it is you're demanding. Another talk, Amplitude Studios. People who know me know that I like to play, I just talked Everspace, now Endless Space, which is a 4X game. So civilization in space, civilization on a galactical scale. But Amplitude Studio has a thing that they call Games Together, where the player base can give input quite directly to the games. It's one of the most player-driven, player-engaged communities for developing. And Amplitude Studios use it the moment they announce a game, they announce it there. They will even announce it to a limited group first, like people who are more or less NDA'd, that they can give feedback and give input. So the players, the fans of Amplitude Studio, can feed straight into the games. There can be voting. They said something that some of the people have as much as 20% of their work time, so that's a full day in a week, is dedicated to interacting with the players and getting feedback, so the players participate in the design process. It's a very risky process because players don't always get this stuff right, but Amplitude Studio says they're making it work. It was really interesting to see.
That's cool.
And they're gamifying the whole interaction, so you get rewards, you can level up the more you interact with them. That's nice.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of things, and they're looking to extend it to others. Now, Sega recently took over Amplitude, so I'm sort of looking forward to see what happens if they might adopt this thing, at least here in Europe. The one thing that pissed me off, a couple of days later, they announced Amplitude's new game. They didn't even give us a hint during this presentation. Well, they said there was something on the way, but not what it was, and I want to play it. Damn you, Amplitude.
And which game is that?
I can't actually remember the name, mostly because I came into the video too late to catch the name. It was live streamed. But it's more 4X, it seems.
Ah, okay.
And it's Amplitude Studio. They do pretty good games. They're quite good. Talked about the background as well, so... Now I know time is running, right? We're past the hour. There was a talk about violence in games. What does it mean for society? What does it... it's a thing, particularly over in Trumpistan, that, oh no, guns in games makes people shoot everybody, because that doesn't happen anywhere else. We won't get into the politics of it, right, Drac?
We don't need to. There's only one thing we need to say. There's an authority figure that is old and wise that we can listen to. In fact, it was something I just saw on Twitter today. It's kind of hilarious that we're talking about this. Somebody posted on Twitter that it's an image of people screaming, and it's like, video games cause violence, and then the next image is Shirley Curry enjoying Skyrim's beautiful scenery, and it's like, and she responded to it, which was great. She's like, so to quote her directly, she says, "Yes, and I don't know where they get this shit about violence. They already have something wrong with them to begin with. Look at the millions of gamers and no violence. I think gamers are some of the greatest and most fun people I've met." And I don't know if any of you have ever looked into. I think there was a documentary, and I think it was done on YouTube somewhere about Shirley Curry, and how she got started doing this stuff, how she got started streaming, what her interactions with the public were like when she first started versus where they are now. And she really has kind of become this beloved figure within the Skyrim community. And it's, true words were not spoken.
So what they did here at DevCom was to have a panel, and there were pretty cool guy that I had a separate meeting with, Sahi, who's former IDF. There was I think a junior developer from the game everybody really should try, My Child Lebensborn. I think it's on Steam now as well, but otherwise on Android and iOS. One of the guys from Extra Credit, one of the voices from Extra Credit was there, etc. There were 0 large publishers, 0 large studios, 0 of the companies who are known for these first-person shooters. There were 0 media outlets participating. They asked, none of them wanted to be there. And the people who were there could, the interesting comments and observations, but ultimately it was a useless panel. Because they couldn't, they could all agree that, yes, single-sided or one-sided presentation of a people, a real existing group in one form or another, as being evil, as being terrible, as being the enemy is bad. And it doesn't matter whether they're Russians or Nazis or Middle Easterns. I think a lot of games have latched onto those as the enemies, particularly here in the West. You don't portray them that single-sided as bad and terrible and evil. Much more nuanced, understand that they're people, understand there are humans behind it.
Yeah.
But nice enough that you can say that, but there was nothing. And later on, Youngbloods, that's Machine Games, Wolfenstein, somebody brought this up, and I've never seen somebody just chicken the fuck out of an answer. That Machine Games and Bethesda just gave the worst possible answer to, well, how do you feel about your portrayal of, Nazi Germany? It was literally just, they're always terrible, without any understanding of what led to Nazi Germany, which means, now that we have Nazi uprising in the US as well, no understanding of what's causing that, and no recognition that that lack of understanding is just fueling it. So, yay, fuck you, Bethesda and Machine Games, for giving a shitty answer.
Well,
that's my view. That's not the team's view.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, is that a question where they're damned if they do and damned if they don't, though? No matter what answer they give, they're probably going to get reamed for it.
No, you can give proper answers to this. I thought it was terrible. As I said, the Violence in Games was not a bad panel. It was just the wrong panel, the wrong people there. And the guy who led that one and also led the Youngbloods panel, the Youngbloods presentation, was ill-equipped despite going, and hi, I'm from the media and press and yada, yada, yada. 22 years of experience. Yeah, but that he should have been more aggressive.
Okay.
And more prepared, honestly. But it was the wrong group of people. I think Sahi, one more on the panel were interesting and they deserve to be there, but we needed some of the other people to be replaced by people who were, as I said, large media outlets, IGN, Kotaku, EA, Bethesda, you name it. Ubisoft, come on, Wildlands. At least they recognized they fucked up with Wildlands. Now moving the next one to a imagined place instead of portraying a whole country as murderers. So that was interesting talks, but ultimately useless. But the Youngbloods one were about the design. I should say it wasn't about the violence in their game, but about the design that now you go co-op, what that means for map designs, storytelling, character design, etc. Really good one. A lot of a lot of information about how maps have to change now that there's 2 players, even if one of them is AI. What that means, and also how to design and work that went into the AI control character if you're playing single player. That was really interesting. Yeah.
I would have had some comments for him on that game had I been sitting in that panel. There's at least 1 or 2 places where you load in and a door opens up, and there's a crap ton of enemies on the other side, and it's like, okay, and then if you try to close the door and go back the other way, it opens up, and it's respawned all the enemies you've cleared out, and there's a crap ton of enemies there, too, and it's like, are you freaking kidding? Can I take a breath when I open the door, please?
But they did touch on things like making sure that both the girls are at the door when it opens up. So you can't just open up and run forward one person and leave the other one behind.
Well, and we talked a little bit about that last week, too, that I felt they kind of a little too heavily relied on the buddy mechanic of requiring 2 people to interact with something to open a door. And I would have been okay if it would have just been like you get to the door and it's like, oh, that it requires that, the other player is, here to continue on.
Nearby.
Versus, because when you do that buddy mechanic where it's like both of you have to be there to open a door, it's like, okay, so you're telling me to go from one section of the city to another to open all these areas that that the way that they thought was best is to have 2 soldiers always have to be there to open the door. And, in some cases it might make sense, especially if it's a secured area, like super secret secured area or something like that. But in others, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, it's a gating mechanism to avoid one person running away from the other. Yeah. And then also at DevCom, we did the Borderlands 3 narrative. And I mentioned that already, that basically talk on how it moved from being a single person responsible for the narrative in Borderlands games, or in Gearbox games in general, and how they now have more people. The weird part was with this one, it really felt like 50% of the talk, it was a 1-hour talk, was just an ad for Borderlands. It was really, really awkward. Everybody who was there was going to play it. Most people, I'm still on the fence. But you could feel in the room, everybody were excited to play Borderlands. And every time he mentioned that it was coming out, people were cheering. This is not just gamers and fans. These are developers who are also gamers and fans. Sat in that room and really listened to every single word. And it just seems superfluous to say repeatedly how many days there were until it comes out. And I think it was 27 or 26 days at the time, right? You don't need to advertise it. It's already done. Everybody in that room are going to buy it.
And don't forget, you can buy it on September 13th.
Yeah. But it was a good talk. I kind of already mentioned the gist of it, that how they made a team. And then a lot of details on how the team was made and who it is and what the stakeholders are, etc. But, it'd be meaningless to go over that in details here. Yeah, I think that was sort of it. DevCom was good for that, and I got to see a lot of indie games. We might be doing a little bit something with a couple of them, because they just lined up a bunch of indie games. There were also various companies like Microsoft, etc. had little booths. People could walk up and ask about them. As Improbable was there. CIG was there. That's Star Citizen. I stole the last pin they had. Haha. This is one of those, if you're a game developer, go to DevCom at least once if you can. It's a good experience, and it's really good for network. I met somebody who was there purely to find a job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I gave him some hints, because we retweet every game job that we see, right?
Right.
And I knew some people who would be at Gamescom, so the next day, who he should reach out to and get a meeting, but via Twitter, because that was all the contact I had for them, that I could share with him. So, and he didn't know, he didn't use Twitter, so it's kind of like, yeah, well, get on Twitter and get all these guys, hey, you here, get a meeting.
Yeah, it's surprising how much of that you see out on Twitter nowadays. Or at least surprising to me, I should say.
Besides that, there's just all the loot that I got, all the bags and jackets and caps and pins, and it was awesome.
We're missing something here, you know this, right? I mean, I let it slide because you wanted to get into DevCom, but there's a huge topic you left out of all of this.
You're right. While I was at while we checked out Devil's Hunt, the guy, the presser guy, kind of goes, "Oh, where are you from?" I said, "Denmark." He goes, "Oh, we have somebody." He pulls me off to the side and presents me for, and you're gonna like this, a Danish guy from my old hometown of Aalborg, right?
Okay.
They bought out the old 3D Realm. Remember those guys? Duke Nukem, etc.
Oh yeah, Duke Nukem. Okay.
Yeah, so they bought that out, and we covered it. I think a month ago or something on an upcoming games that they were making Wrath, and they released Iron something. Damn it, we literally were giving 3 games. Nope, not that one. That's Iron Danger. That's a different one.
Ion Maiden, but that was renamed to Ion Fury, I think, because of some legal reasons.
So we covered that it came out earlier, and Wrath is coming out anytime. It's supposed to come out summer, so anytime now Wrath is coming out. They're built on the old, one's built on the old Quake engine, one's built on the old, the same engine as Duke Nukem was built on. And it's not so much that they're identical. No, they're built on. The games releasing this year that are built on those old engines by the teams, by the people, well, with help of the people from 3D Realm, etc. All Quake developers. How awesome is that?
That is pretty awesome. And for the folks at home who maybe are new to the show or haven't been around long enough to figure out, G loves to troll people. That's like his passion in life. And so he's trolling me right now by trying to think of anything to talk about other than Cyberpunk. I mean, I would have thought you got your, like, the trolling out of your system by sending me a picture of the jacket that you got that I'm never going to get, so...
Oh, that is a sweet jacket.
You're a jerk. So talk about the experience you had with the Cyberpunk developers.
Okay, so I have no idea why or how. Big shout out to whomever at the comms team at CD Projekt Red who got me on this list. We got invited to go and see Cyberpunk 2077 at Gamescom, but not in the public area, in the business-to-business area.
It was almost enough for me to try and get a ticket there.
Yeah. It's a 1-hour presentation. We got I arrived. I go, hey, I have an invitation here for it. I show it to her, and she goes, okay, so what size? And I'm thinking, t-shirts. Look at me. It's a small hippo. And the girl just looks at me completely. Is this the last day? Yeah, we're Thursday. So she's been there, sat at that booth, doing nothing but receiving people and telling them where to do, and write, small, medium, large on the note. One after another. That's all she's been doing for 2.5 days. And here's a guy who says small hippo instead of small, medium, large, extra large, right? And her look was just completely pale. and next to her, there's a guy sitting, he starts giggling. She goes, what? Wait, what? I said, yeah, we're small hippo because you don't have them in my size. How about I get a size 2XL and a size 3XL and then sew them together and I'll have a 5XL, which is the shirt size I'm wearing right now. And she's again completely lost, and the guy sitting next to her breaks down because he's getting what I'm saying. I'm too fat for any t-shirt they might have for me.
Oh, man.
So I say, do you know what? Give me a large and I'll give it to my daughter. Okay, large, and I get the note. So leaving the next steps and jumping forward a little bit, I realize, I still haven't realized what I've gotten. But I write to Drac, hey, dude, I picked up one. I understand one of these shirts. I understand that you'll be in Europe later this year. Does a size large work okay? And Drac, what did you reply?
I think that you mentioned something about the jacket, because I know my reply included things like, well, typically I wear an extra large, but if I don't zip it up, I can make it work.
And all I said back was, oh, well, it's a large, and I think it's a little bit small. I'll just give it to my daughter. And Drac broke down crying.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still recovering.
Yeah, but I genuinely did not know what it was. I just thought it was a t-shirt that we'll be getting.
Yeah, I get this text from him while he's on the train on the way back, and he's like, oh my god, this isn't a t-shirt. This is a really nice jacket, and it's reversible. And I'm like, you fucking turd, man.
Oh, it is, and it is reversible, and it's yellow on the inside. And earlier tonight, my daughter was running, the small one was running around. It's way too big for her. With the yellow outside, which is her old favorite color. And she just runs around going, I'm a banana, I'm a banana, I'm a banana. They've already been fighting over who gets to wear it to school.
Well, it's a pretty sick jacket, man. So I hope they enjoy it, though.
But we get from that little entrance reception thing into what is basically a bar. Except all the drinks that are in the bar are just displayed. There's nothing you can drink. But there's a fridge over in a corner that's full of beer and cider. And I kind of go, is something non-alcoholic? And he goes, nope.
We don't serve those kind here.
But we've been told in the email, no pictures, no nothing. But I recorded a little bit, took a couple of pictures from this bar area. So you might get to see that if you're on the YouTube version. But it's a small bar. There was a couple of girls manning it, and why they were manning the bar where there's no bar, I don't know. But one of them was telling how freaking bored she was. And then in the middle of it, they start recording a 1-minute promo for something. Have one of the devs and this really dark, dimly lit bar. They show up with this spotlight to light up this guy, and everybody in there's going, oh, damn it, my eyes.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. But eventually, it's our turn. We get led into what they call the cinema, which is like 4 rows of seat and a big screen, and I'm sorry, they pretend that it's a guy playing it, that one of the developers who are there are playing it, like somebody's sitting there with a controller and pretending to be playing it. But it's a recording. It's a video that they play of gameplay.
Okay.
But the game looked good. The first thing that happened when we get in, while we're still seeing, somebody starts taking pictures. Like, you've been told not to. So yeah, one of the security guys goes up and double checks that the guy deletes the pictures and checks his phone.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been pretty tight-lipped about that stuff, which I totally get. So I know we're supposed to see the footage sometime online here. I think originally it was supposed to be after PAX West, but I think, didn't they say it was going to be sometime before that now, since they're not going to PAX?
No idea.
Okay.
But it looks really sweet. For starters, we see, I think I told you Johnny Silverhand is there, and he only has 5 lines in the whole game. No, he has more than that. Don't worry.
Yeah, I know.
But they showed, like, from a part of the game where they played through some dialogue, some running around that looks really, really well. They still haven't solved the moving seamlessly from place to place. The open world seamless transition.
Gotcha.
So there were loading screens, and they went, oh, don't tell anybody there's loading screens, because there won't be loading screens. And there probably won't be, but in this one they had. And I sort of assume it's just to keep from make the travel time shorter in this particular case. They initially play as a man with one background, so they show the whole background system and how you can make yourself look and change your appearances, and how your background then plays in. So as they play through a mission, say, well, we'll do it this way, we'll hack this thing, we'll do that thing. Okay, what if we were a different character and then they switched over? Here's a woman, she has a different background, she has different statistics. Instead of hacking in, she just kind of breaks down doors. How to hack turrets so they are on your side, or just go up and physically tear the gun out of the turret and just massacre everybody.
Oh,
so different play styles with different characters and character backgrounds and setups, so you can choose how you want to play, and that seemed to work really well.
Nice.
We didn't get a controller in our hands. We didn't get to try it. As I said, I guarantee the person sitting in front with the controller wasn't playing. But it looked like it played really well, and the graphics were really good. But I don't want to play this on a PS4 or an Xbox One. This needs some oomph. Anything less than an RTX 2080 Ti, no, don't bother. Right?
Yeah, I'm still trying to see if I can get an RTX card by the middle or end of April next year when this comes out.
Middle of April, yeah.
Yeah. So did they talk at all about multiplayer? Because I know that
Nope.
It won't release with multiplayer, but I also know we've seen info that they're talking about they have people on a team dedicated to, working on multiplayer. So
Nope.
I'm hoping it's not going to be just. That's fine. I'm hoping it's not going to be just like versus modes. I'm hoping we're going to actually get some cooperative play or whatever. But I guess we'll have to wait.
I would not expect that. Based on previous CDPR game, based on what they showed us, no. The mission was very much you're it kind of style, right?
Right.
And the interaction with Johnny Silverhand is very much, again, you're it. He's not talking to a group, he's talking to you.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
fixing
no. I
you.
didn't mean that they would add co-op to the main story that you were already playing through as
The main story wouldn't work.
Yeah, no, I meant more or less like that whenever they got around to adding multiplayer, if that does actually happen, that there might be some cooperative things that you can do, like maybe missions and stuff you can go do. Although I would love to see a full-fledged story playthrough that's co-op, but I don't expect that, not out of this game. Maybe, Cyberpunk 2077 Part 2, hopefully.
Cyberpunk 2078.
Yeah, there.
So, no, it was a good presentation, but very on rails and very strict. Yeah, I'm still looking forward. I think after this, my opinion has changed enough that I would actually buy it. I don't know if I'm getting it April because, But no, now I actually do want to play because the mechanics they showed seem to be up my alley.
Cool.
But it does feel weird that it's not third person.
I get why they went with first person, especially in a shooting game. Like you can do first or third, either way works. But I get the explanation that they gave and why they chose to go first person. I think when it comes to some of the melee stuff, that might be a little awkward. But beyond that, and in fact, any game that's got a first person shooting component, if there's a melee aspect to it, when you switch to a melee weapon, I always prefer an option to switch to third person. And I know we're not going to get that with this, but I don't know. Like I said, can't wait to get my hands on the game, but I'm trying to temper my excitement as much as possible until April next year.
Yeah. And now I just need to lose about 50 kilos so I can fit the jacket.
One last dig before we get out of here. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that has been our Gamescom, DevCom wrap-up, as well as upcoming games for September. Thank you very much for sticking with us.
Yeah. nothing else to add, then catch you next week.
Like, share, subscribe, all that.
Yeah, hit a button. Do something. Ciao.